So the expert here really is Alfonso. So I'm going to introduce him and then hand it over to Alfonso, who designs and coordinates our global advocacy campaigns at Caritas Internationalis and is currently focusing on debt relief in the context of the Jubilee year. Alfonso pioneered and integrated global social justice campaigns into Caritas's operations in 2012, launching the organization's first ever global anti-poverty campaign, Food for All, in 2013. He later led Share the Journey in 2017 on global migration, Together We on integral ecology in 2021, and now Turn Debt into Hope, launched in December 2024. With a background in political economy, public policy, and social research, Alfonso prioritizes strategies that amplify the voices of socially vulnerable communities and place human dignity at the heart of policy and practice change initiatives. Alfonso, thanks so much for making the time today, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Brianna, and thank you to everyone for having me today again. Yeah, I think I'm at home with you. I'm really excited and absolutely delighted to be sharing our plans for the Jubilee year with you all today. I think the presentation that I'm going to give has been shared with you all, so you should have it, which you can use and reuse as you can see, as you see fit. I'd like this space and time to be as interactive as possible, so please stop me if there's anything unclear or opaque that you would like me to expand on, and then we're going to have a little time and space to have a chat afterwards. With that said, I'm going to share my screen. Some of you may already have seen this. Can I just have a very quick yes from anyone to confirm that you can actually see my screen?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. So, as you can see, this one campaign is Caritas's Jubilee Debt campaign called Turn Debt into Hope. With the slogan, we have really wanted to already illustrate how we want things to change with the letters being turned upside down, and also with the shift of narrative that I will suggest be part of our campaigning and advocacy efforts this year and beyond. The colours of the campaign slogan are also representative of who we are. So the invitation with this campaign that was launched on the 23rd of December is that every single member organisation of the Caritas Network, every faith-based and civil society organisation can use and reuse the content of the campaign to advance their own mission and operations. And they can do so by changing the colour in the campaign slogan. So we've adopted the burgundy brown that you can see there in the word hope, and every endorsing organisation is welcome to change that colour to then associate it seamlessly with the logo of their respective organisations in English, French and Spanish, which are the three official working languages of the Caritas Confederation. You have been working with Brianna for quite some time already, so I don't need to explain what Caritas Internationalis is about. I'll just confine myself to saying it's a global network, and it's the second largest organization in the world after the Federation of Red Cross, dealing with humanitarian and development operations. Now, a little bit of the background for everyone to gain a better understanding of why we're doing this now and why we're doing this in the context of the Jubilee. Now, we want to capitalize on the Jubilee tradition, which is, as many of you know, a historical concept of restoration and release, calling for freeing those oppressed by unjust and unsustainable debts. Historically, as many of you will remember, Jubilee years have been used to address the public debt issue. 25 years ago, Some of you may still remember the Jubilee 2000 campaign that freed some, oh, I never remember the exact number, billions of dollars for many developing countries that could then use some fiscal space in their countries to invest in essential healthcare, education, and infrastructure. The landscape has, though, immeasurably changed since that campaign was launched. We now have a completely different landscape where the vast majority of public debt in developing countries is owed to private lenders, no more to the World Bank or the IMF, for example. And so our strategies and policy and advocacy asks have also had to change accordingly. I think that the theme of the Jubilee year is absolutely timely. With the theme being Pilgrims of Hope, we want, with this Turn Debt into Hope campaign, to offer renewed hope with a narrative path towards hope for those burdened by crippling debt in the global south, which is why we chose that campaign slogan, Turning Debt into Hope. No one or very few are in fact talking about a silent debt crisis that is still going on, as I just said, in a completely different way. And we wanted with this campaign to raise awareness about the current debt crisis, which is particularly affecting 23, to be precise, lower income economies in the world or at risk of default. The campaign goal, very simply, is to promote debt justice, to support people in the most indebted countries in the world. And our stakeholders are, as I said briefly in passing at the beginning, not just Caritas member organizations like CRS and CCUSA in the US, but also other regional teams or local groups or faith-based or civil society organizations with whom we share a commitment to debt advocacy and campaigning. In terms of key activities, we're going to have an internal kind of calendar and an external calendar. So internally, we're going to mobilize all those who are interested in campaigning with us around two main events. The first event is the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si. As you may recall, this was issued 10 years ago, around the 24th of May. So to mark the 10th anniversary, we're going to launch a relay of light activity. We're all familiar with the passing on of the light, the torchbearers in Olympic Games. So the concept is very much the same. We're going to ask campaign supporters to light a candle, say, turn debt into hope, and pass it on to other campaign supporters around the world. We're going to start in Samoa in the Pacific at midday on the 24th of May or thereabouts. We haven't set on a specific date around the 10th anniversary yet, but it's going to be there in that week. And then move on to the next time zone, all the way through to the last time zone in American Samoa, 24 hours later. We did it already in 2013 with the help of CRS, actually. We called it Wave of Prayer. It was beautiful, and the engagement that we had then was amazing. We're also going to mobilize our stakeholders around World Jubilee of the Poor on the 16th of November this year. Obviously, poverty is at the heart of the mission and vision of Caritas Internationalis, but this is a space where we all share the same perspective and mission. So I'm sure I am repeating basically what everyone has already been doing for many years. In terms of key outcomes, as I said, we want to raise awareness around the justice, but also secure the inclusion of debt language in Jubilee and political processes to reignite discussions around three key pillars outlined in the campaign petition that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. We have started this campaign as a one-year effort. We launched it on the 23rd of December. Pope Francis talked extensively about debt on Boxing Day, on the 26th of December. And he again mentioned the debt crisis in the message on World Peace Day on the 1st of January, explicitly and publicly supporting Caritas's campaign around debt justice, which is great. I will stop here for a second before moving on and ask around if you're okay, if you want me to elaborate on anything specific, if you already have any questions, or if you would rather wait until the presentation is over, so you don't get bored listening to my voice all the time.
I have one, Alfonso, about some of the language on your last slide where you mentioned that you wanted to secure language related to debt in the Jubilee. I think we're all familiar with trying to include language on something in a political process, but what does it mean to include language in the Jubilee?
Thank you for that question. I think the idea is that as we see from here in Vatican City, there's a lot said and written about the Jubilee principles from a pastoral point of view. We still see very little said and written about the socio-political implications of the Jubilee, hence the decision to say secure inclusion of debt in what we say and do within the Catholic circles and community. So we don't talk enough about that, if you like. So we would like to see more of debt talk in what we say and do. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
Yes, Alfonso, you mentioned so many countries are in the debt crisis. Could you please mention some countries in the world
Of course.
affected by this debt crisis?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So, for example, as far as Africa is concerned, Zambia is one of those. Burundi, Ghana, Kenya are only a few of the African countries that are affected by spiraling public debt levels. Some of those that I've mentioned are at risk of default. The risk that these nations run is when by the default, they ranking their stability internationally would go down so badly that no one will want to have any trade relations with those countries anymore. So no one wants to default. So the idea is that, these countries start negotiating debt relief, which may mean two things. Very generally, debt cancellation, through and through, or debt restructuring. With the second meaning a number of different policy solutions. These are usually ad hoc policy solutions. So you usually negotiate these solutions with 2-3 different actors in the process. One of these policy solutions, perhaps one of the most popular policy solutions, are the so-called debt for development swaps. So what does that mean? That in order for a country to get debt relief, there's a sort of an agreement stricken between 2 or 3 actors whereby the amount of public spending that is no longer used to pay the debt will be used for development. However, critics say that's a very, very long process. It takes way too long. The poor, cannot wait that long, and there should be debt cancellation instead. As you can probably imagine, there are many contentious points, and there's no silver bullet. There are very diverse scenarios and situations, and so every single country has a very specific, you know, makeup of policy solutions that has to consider. But anyway, so that is the case with a large number of countries in Africa, but some countries in Latin America, a few countries in Africa, like in Asia, like Sri Lanka and Vietnam. And even if it's not hugely recognized, a few Pacific islands, so in Oceania, like Tonga or Fiji, they have very high levels of public debt, and they can't use their public money for climate action, for example, which is why they are starting to get very interested in debt and climate action combined. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Any others? No? Okay. I'll then move on to the three components that make up the structure of the Turn Debt into Hope campaign. So we have a public engagement and social mobilization element or dimension. So we engage the general public through a dedicated website. As I said, this is in English, French, and Spanish, with editable resources that supporters can download and translate into the language spoken in the country, but at the same time, or tweak as they see fit, including the actions that we want to see replicated globally, as I said, in May 2025 and November. Then there's a campaign pack that everyone can download from the Turn Debt into Hope.org website to engage communities locally and help local leaders amplify the messaging through a common petition, which again I'll present later. And we are thinking about launching local pilgrimages in combination of the Relay of Light activity in May and or in November. The other two components are more policy or political kind of activities. The second one is actually very relevant to the US context, because as some of you may know, a significant amount of debt contracts are actually regulated through the New York state legislation. An even greater part is regulated in the City of London. Very, very few contracts are regulated in other parts of the world, in other legislations. What does that mean? It means that the UK and the US in particular could consider running policy change, advocacy and campaigning to change the actual legislation to do, for example, to make, for example, the names and the makeup of the private lenders more transparent in the borrowing and lending scenario. This is not known, this is incredibly difficult, and this can only start from the countries where this legislation is located. And then national policy, this is the national policy advocacy. I talked about the national policy advocacies first. The international influencing of policy processes is around using the petition towards, I'd say, 4 key political moments in 2025. There are the G7, the Forum on Financing for Development, which is going to take place in Spain this year, in late June, early July, and then COP30 and the G20 in South Africa, where debt will be discussed with finance ministers. What are we using to support people around the world? So as I said, there's a campaign pack with a number with 10 items in it in 3 different languages, a campaign petition, a guide to organising a relay of light, and then we're going to hold capacity sharing sessions online to align our interests and actions. And this is the common petition that we're using to make sure that we all say, roughly speaking, the same thing. So we want to stop the debt crisis now by cancelling and remedying unjust and unsustainable debts without economic policy conditions. Number 2, prevent debt crisis from happening again by addressing their root causes, reforming the global financial system to prioritize people and the planet. Thirdly, establish a permanent, transparent, binding and comprehensive debt framework within the United Nations. As you can see, there's an optional 4th point, which is meant for those groups and organizations in the world willing to sign the petition, but also tailor it to their needs. So if there, say, there's a specific advocacy ask that an organization or a group of people want to include, they can do so. They can make it more palatable to their own context. Now, this is a petition that, as I said, is being adopted by the Caritas Network, but also by some 40 other faith-based and civil society organizations in the world, which is amazing. We don't necessarily use the same language, so they can be simpler, shorter sentences, for example, but the concept remains the same. There are initiatives around the network and beyond for translating the petition into other languages, including Germany now through Jubilee. You all know perhaps Jubilee USA. So there's an equivalent in Germany called very simply Jubilee Germany. They looking to have that up and running in German. In Hungary, they're doing the same between Caritas Hungary and Friends of the Earth Hungary together, which is again a super good practice to share. And we're looking to have a version in Portuguese for those working in Brazil and in the Portuguese speaking space around COP30. So we want strategically to use the campaign petition around the 4, I'd say, political moments this year, mainly. This will be our main advocacy ask, and we're going to use a collaborative approach to using the political spaces to bring those messages to the fore. This is quite an internal timeline, but basically you can see what we would like to be doing across the timeline of the Confederation. So by February, for example, we want to have checked the end of February the benchmarks and indicators to measure the campaign's impact, etc. This is for everyone really just to say that we are going to check and perhaps change the trajectory of the campaign life cycle by judging what's going on. And we all know and we all see how things politically and socially change so quickly, especially how things have shifted lately. Again, this is more of an internal tool to illustrate what we do by when. I think this is my last slide, and this is about the indicators of impact or success that we've adopted. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we want that language included in the Jubilee processes and also in political processes. We want the Global Petition action used by Catholic and faith civil society organizations throughout the year. And this is a very ambitious number, I am aware, with over 10 million signatures gathered. So I don't know how many of you are aware that there's 1.4 billion Catholics in the world. So we said, why not put 10 million there? So maybe that will spur people on to sign the petition, not just individually, but also then promote the petition far and wide as best they can towards their circles and organizations. If everyone signs the petition and then send it on to others with a snowball effect, we can have thousands of signatures in any given constituency quite easily. Local actions, so the idea is that, as an indicator, we want to have relays of light and pilgrimages organised at the grassroots level around key Catholic and political events in 2025. And the campaign petition is signed by not only all of the members of the Caritas Network, which are 162 members in the world, but also beyond. And in terms of international policy processes, debt justice brought back high on the agenda in key international processes like the G20. At least one significant international policy win across the spectrum of what we've seen today. And Pope Francis includes debt in at least one speech, and 5 Catholic influential people are proactive influencing decision makers in 2025. And with that, I think I'm done. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy to answer any further questions you may have.
Thank you, Alfonso. My name is Janet Palafox. A number of us here are also members of another committee called the NGO Committee on the Financing for Development. I think, Brianna, you may have been asked to attend our breakfast, but my question actually is also relevant to most of us, because I have met with one or two mission member representative of a mission, and there's 3 questions I'd like to ask. Whether Caritas has wording that can assist us when we're asked about this. So first is if you have any data in relation to the countries that had been forgiven debt before, and what happened. Has it improved, or are they, I'm hoping that they're not the same country who are also again in extreme debt this time. The other thing is, compared to the Jubilee in 2000, most of the countries you've mentioned, their debt are actually to China, specifically. So unlike previously where it's IMF and World Bank. So again, is there an approach directly from Caritas or the Vatican to China? Because that is the key issue, one of the issues here. And the third, and this was actually a direct question from a member state, is the issue of corruption. I didn't see any of that wording in your campaign, and I know that is always been the question. Now, there's corruption in all the world, including here in the US, as we know. But this is a big question. And we also know that not only the Global South has huge debt, even the Global North. And so I think we need to have a narrative in relation to the unjust financial structure, because all countries have debt. It's just the system is different for the Global South, but also the issue of corruption. And we hope we could link up with you on the other committee, because this is really important, and we really support this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't seem to find your name anymore, but thank you on the screen. Janet, thank you, Janet. Very quickly, data. Yes, we are partnering with the One campaign, the one that was promoted by Bono 25 years ago. So they're providing us with stats and updated facts and figures that we can use to substantiate what we say, so the arguments that we're using in our narrative. And we are also in partnership with and collaborating with Debt Justice UK and Jubilee USA, who the former a lay organization, the latter a faith-based organization, as you may know. And so they've been doing this for more than 25 years, and they've got stats and numbers that we can use again to make our advocacy claims more robust. So we don't produce those stats internally, if you like, but we are working with others who do those things really well to make sure that whatever we say is buttressed by solid evidence. Yes, aware that most debts, well, a large number of debts is owed to China. The only thing that I can say is that we can use the wisdom and authorship, if you like, of Pope Francis to issue pastoral letters through the bishops' conferences in the world to address that, together with the dicastery for promoting integral human development. Politically, it becomes really difficult to address one specific country and corner that specific country publicly and institutionally as a faith-based network like Caritas Internationalis, but that's very much there. So we are absolutely aware. And so with that said, I can't answer you specifically whether there should be or there will be a specific statement around or addressing China. Third point, corruption. One of our member organizations in the Philippines, Caritas Philippines, is called NASA, and they have specifically wanted to include transparency and corruption in governance mechanisms in the country as their fourth point in the petition. So when it comes to choosing how to use the petition, if you've decided that you like it, you want to endorse it, you want to use it, then you can add a fourth point around governance, transparency, and corruption to say these things are fine. However, transparency and corruption also need to be addressed systematically in order for debt relief to make sense. And lastly, we all know through, Keynes that debt is part of our economies. Debt will always exist. We're not going to delete it. It's just going to be there. The problem that this campaign is addressing is unjust and unsustainable debt, and also ecological debt that Pope Francis mentions in the Spes non confundit document that he launched with the Jubilee year, which means that there are political and systemic mechanisms that have led to unsustainable, levels of debt that are no longer just to justify. And so, and I've been in discussions with the Holy See dicastery for promoting integral human development, who are willing to write and disseminate a document of what we mean by ecological debt, ideally in September or October ahead of COP30 and the G20.
Sorry, one last thing. You are working with Holy See? Brianna, are you working with the Holy See here at the UN?
At the moment, it's being coordinated with the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, which is where the Caritas Internationalis Secretariat sits under in Vatican City. And then moving forward, we'd like to incorporate that down to the national level and the UN, both in New York and Geneva with the missions. Yeah.
Another question, is this campaign that turned that into hope is related to the climate finance debt? Because in the COP, there's also people also talk about that. How much this campaign also related to that issue?
Thank you for your question. It's very much there. That's the short answer. There are specific areas of the world, and in the Confederation, like for example in the Pacific, in Oceania, where debt and climate are tightly connected. And there are working groups already being set up around the intersection of debt and climate. However, that's not the focus in other areas of the world where priority is given to healthcare, access, or to education, or to building infrastructure, as there are, for example, no roads to go to work. However, the focus on climate is prominent in some countries in Africa and very much there in the Pacific. And COP30, for example, has been chosen as one of the 4 key political moments this year, in continuity with talks coming from last year around climate finance and innovative ways of creating climate finance for those who can't wait until, for example, a loss and damage fund is up and running. So one other policy solution, not too different from what I mentioned earlier, is the so-called debt for nature swap or debt for climate swap. These are also policy solutions that have been promoted to some success. Again, very long-winded process to free up fiscal space that is then earmarked for climate action on a national level, with some success again. But there are also many critics that think it's just too long, and there must be a quicker way of freeing up fiscal space.
I don't know, we have time for one more question before concluding this wonderful educational session. Another question or comment? Yes, please, Sister Jane.
Interested in the schedule. I'm interested in the schedule for the relays of light. That is something concrete, perhaps we could pass on to our sisters in all the countries that we're at, because the whole concept of trying to eliminate debt is a bit much for me to synthesize as I'm trying to communicate this idea, but the campaign is right on, and it does pick up with one we had 20 years ago. It's not a new thrust, because I remember being active in that. So if at some point you send out or tell me where to look, all the things that come on the web, I could pass that on to our sisters. Relay of Light for debt reduction, to keep on sustainable burdened by the debt.
Thank you, Sister Jane. So 2 things. There's a campaign pack that everyone can download from the turndebtintohope.org website. There's a very simple and straightforward how-to guide to organizing a relay of light. But we are going to have graphically designed tools that will be made available. And I'm sure that with the help of Brianna and this network, we'll then share these resources when they become available. And yeah, I mean, the 2 simplest things that spring to mind are maybe we could all just consider signing the petition to begin with, and then, tuning to the whole mobilization around the campaign and just participate in what we will do in May and November, particularly for the Catholic and faith community this year.
Thank you.
I have few proposals. Now, based on this Pope Francis's invitation, the three proposals for the Jubilee year, maybe not three actions that we could initiate. I don't know how many of us will be there in Washington, D.C. for the IMF World Bank meeting. What I heard is that the World Bank has already contacting Holy See, and they have positive way of positively approaching this invitation of Pope. And it is in the initial state, the discussion between the Holy See and the World Bank. So this World Bank meeting and spring meeting, whether we could organize a side event at the meeting on this issue of debt cancellation or debt relief. Second is the FFD conference here this time in April.
It was a forum.
As the FFD forum, yes.
Conference in
yeah,
June.
that also we can maybe together with Holy See and Caritas, together if we organize an event to make this aware of among the member countries, and then to have a campaign, we can initiate the FFD conference. Maybe another thing, maybe together with all these three proposals of the Holy Father, the debt cancellation, then abolition of death penalty, and creating the fund for poverty eradication or ending hunger and climate finance. Together with the Holy See, if we could organize something at the UN level, and an event, these three proposals are very important also. I think that this is very concretely that we can do from here at the UN New York.
There's also a global social protection fund that's being a campaign to create, as I think most of people know. But also, if you haven't read it, the Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty actually put out a paper in relation to the Financing for Development conference, where he or she, I can't, sorry. They looked at what can be done, and there are a few proposals there. I don't know if Alfonso, you have had a chance, and Caritas have had a look at it, because there are some things there that are contentious, obviously, but we would be interested if what the paper is saying is something that Caritas thinks can work. And also, if you have wordings, the negotiations for the zero draft for the conference is now happening. And like I said, the committee is very much involved, but I think from what I gather from the meeting we had, the breakfast meeting we had, the Holy See is also very much involved in that negotiations.
Yes, and just to let you know, for those of you who are not close enough to the screen to be able to see the chat box, Brianna did drop the link to the campaign website in the chat box, so I will be sure to email that out to everybody following the meeting today. So you will all be able to access that website and take a look at all of these different resources that we've been discussing today.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Katie, do feel free to share my email. I think 99% of the people in this meeting have it, but just in case anyone needs a reminder, I'm happy to be in touch by email to continue the conversations around what can be done in New York in terms of the Financing for Development forums that happen here, as well as looking towards VIA. And any questions that I can't answer, I'm very lucky to be in close contact with Alfonso and be able to, I'll be able to get in touch with him and liaise with Rome in terms of answering your questions. But really looking forward to continuing this using this momentum to continue forward and think about how we best advocate for and in the Jubilee year.
you.
Not a member of NGO FFD or will not attend the Spring World Bank Forum, but as an organization, I would like to support the idea of, for example, hosting a parallel event during these big events. And I would also suggest that from the key messages of Pope Francis, which also Rohan shared in the last meeting about debt relief, life, and military expenditure, to put those out, because I believe that most of the debt of countries, including my own country, is due to military expenditure. So kind of connect those issues with these programs. Huh?
If I may quickly.
Yes, please.
I think the idea of promoting the campaign messaging during the biannuals and the spring meetings is excellent. And as you have Brianna in New York, and Brianna is always a stellar colleague who is always there for, you know, at least capturing the ideas, and then we may think about how to make that happen together. But I think that would be an excellent idea for a side event that could be organized, perhaps in concert with Jubilee USA Network. So not alone, because Caritas Internationalis and Jubilee USA co-launched the campaign together on the 23rd of December. It would be nice to continue doing that together because, you know, the more the merrier. So it's just that if we are more, our voices become very likely stronger. Also, we had recently a meeting with a World Bank representative here at the General Secretariat in Vatican City. It was really interesting, I have to say, because obviously they said, well, we can't change the nature of, you know, the World Bank. The World Bank is still an institutional, in a financial institution, so we do our job. And so our argument was, okay, however, the international financial architecture is decades old and that badly needs some updating. So maybe we could think about what sort of messaging we would like to propose going forward in terms of what are the changes that we need to see to make the debt issue more sustainable for those who needed it the most. So that was some sort of opening there. And I'm keen to explore what synergy could come out of that, new contact, perhaps during or in the lead up to the spring meetings. So again, let's kick around a few ideas, and we're more than happy to make those things happen and, you know, amplify the messaging as much as possible. And again, I hear that climate finance comes up quite often. So again, if that is a focus that a few people are interested in, do let us know who would like to maybe be part of a broader conversation, and we can see how to take it from there. Lastly, Oliver de Scutter, so the special UN Special Rapporteur on extreme poverty, he also supported our first ever global campaign on food security in 2013. He's a friend of Caritas, and I'm sure he'd like to keep supporting what we're doing and have a human rights-centered approach.
One question.
Kevin?
Yes, Kevin Cawley, Evan Rice International. I didn't hear today the name Mia Motley. And I think she has made significant dents in the world population question about debt relief for poor countries. She's also been very vocal at the COPs. She was at COP 28, COP 29, she'll be at 30. Making the case. She's very strong and very fearless when she's addressing world leaders. Basically, she stands up there and challenges them, and she also says, I have the receipts.
Yes,
She's very strong. And I'm wondering if she's somehow connected to this conversation, and if she isn't, I'd recommend that that be part of your plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Alfonso, thank you so much for being with us this morning for us and afternoon for you from the Vatican. You are joining us, and we really appreciate your sharing with us and encouraging us to be part of this From Debt into Hope campaign. And I believe that we will be in touch, particularly with Brianna. So thank you for being with us today. Alfonso, I don't know, you are most welcome to stay with us, but we understand if you have something else to do. So we really appreciate your company and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beatriz, and thank you to Brianna, and thanks to every one of you today. Again, Brianna is your first port of call. Please let us know if you would like to continue chatting about this initiative. We would be absolutely delighted to have everyone on board. Thank you again. I do have to go because I'm traveling tonight. But thank you again, and I hope we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'm also going to drop off for another meeting, but as I said to Katie, please do be in touch by email, knock on my door anytime, send a WhatsApp, however we can be in contact and continue using this momentum and interest to build our advocacy messaging moving forward. Be great. Thanks so much for having Caritas with you today.
Thank you so much for joining us.